Obviously, you didn't have the data, you didn't have the analysis to know that people were going to love that, but it was something that struck a chord with people. And so it's like
but if you use your model,
yeah,
they would never have made it, because they had just invented PG-13. The wife of the vice president of the United States was out, Tipper Gore, on a campaign to shut down everything that was marketed. MTV announced they wouldn't let you market R-rated movies to any kids, and most of the movie marketing people felt that the way to reach kids was through MTV at that time, right? So you're walking again into a room.
Right.
We want to go R-rated. We want to talk about losing their virginity. We're going to have drunks, right? We're going to be politically incorrect. We want to spend $11 million, right? And we're going to have no stars. Once again, your AI, your guy who brings out your spreadsheet is looking at me and going, thanks for your time, Chris. As a friend, start looking at the data, right? And I'm going to say to him, as your friend, you better start picking a couple of these things that just feel like people might like it. Because the difference for me and where I react to data is, the point is that you can see what people like in a thematic way, in a structural way of how it's delivered, in a, you know, and where I think that becomes super valuable is the budgets you spend on it. $150 million version of American Pie, dumbest waste of time ever, right? So the guy who comes in and says, okay, Chris, you're right. I grew up on Porky's and Fast Times and all these R-rated movies. That's where I went to learn about culture. I'm from a tiny little town. I went into the theater and said, this is how people are doing Saturday Night Fever, all this other shit, right? I'm like, those kids aren't getting that. The kid in my hometown right now, back in 1993 when we made American Pie, he didn't have anybody to talk to because there was no YouTube, right? And there was nothing. So I'm like, he needs an R-rated movie, right? And they let us do it. And they came in and they had the conversation about, well, you know, we really shouldn't spend more than this. And then in my opinion, they stupidly sold to foreign, right? So that their investment was $4 million. And they made 220. Okay, I don't care what business school you went to. 4 million to 220 is a good return on investment, right? So all I would say to you is, there is a part of the industry that has to be ahead of the curve. Because if they're all analytics on stuff that already happened, right? So like Jason Blum deserves a ton of credit. Just saying, you know, the audience doesn't give a shit how much you spend on this thing. You make a scary movie, you go out there and do Paranormal Activity. This is a great, I can go release this like a giant movie knowing I only spent $1 million to $2 million on it. They'll spend the marketing, well, I'll make a lot of money, right? And the point is, he turned it into a whole business. Now, every 2 weeks, there seems to be a Blumhouse movie and a Purge and a, you know, Saul come back, and there'll be, and the point is, once it becomes derivative, the audience turns off. That's the big difference with consumer products when you talk about the merger with advertisers, is people are going to buy Tide forever.
Yeah.
People aren't going to run to the theater to see horror movies forever.